In a world where central banks conjure trillions of dollars into existence at the click of a button, the idea of printing fiat to acquire Bitcoin sounds at once absurd, dangerous, and brilliant. The first country to print its own currency to buy Bitcoin wins is a phrase that has circulated among crypto anarchists, macroeconomists, and geopolitical observers alike. But what does it really mean? And could it actually be true? To understand the weight of this idea, we must step back and examine the mechanics of both fiat and Bitcoin. Fiat currency is, by design, infinite. Central banks have full control over its issuance, and governments frequently rely on this power to stimulate growth, rescue failing industries, or service ballooning debt. The cost of this convenience, however, is inflation, an erosion of purchasing power that, over time, punishes savers and benefits debtors. In extreme cases, such as Venezuela or Zimbabwe, reckless printing has led to hyperinflation, poverty, and political collapse. Bitcoin, on the other hand, is the antithesis of fiat. It has a hard-coded supply cap of 21 million coins. It cannot be printed, debased, or inflated away. It is borderless, decentralized, and mathematically scarce. Unlike gold, it can be transferred across the world in seconds, without the permission of any government or bank. These properties make it not only a store of value, but potentially the most potent monetary weapon of the 21st century. So imagine this: a sovereign nation, recognizing the structural weaknesses of the fiat system and the asymmetrical upside of Bitcoin, decides to print a portion of its currency, not to buy government bonds, not to fund infrastructure, but to quietly accumulate Bitcoin. From a financial perspective, this is genius. The country is using a depreciating asset, its own fiat, to acquire an appreciating one. If Bitcoin's adoption continues to grow, its price will rise, not linearly, but exponentially. As the world's central banks inflate their balance sheets, and as global trust in fiat continues to decline, Bitcoin becomes more attractive, not only to investors, but to nations seeking financial sovereignty. But this isn't just about making a profit. This is about geopolitical leverage. The first mover in this space will acquire Bitcoin while it is still relatively undervalued before major powers react. If Bitcoin reaches a status similar to gold, perhaps even surpassing it as a digital reserve asset, the early adopter will hold a monetary weapon unlike anything seen before. Consider the implications. A nation with billions in Bitcoin reserves could bypass traditional sanctions. It could settle international trade without needing dollars, euros, or SWIFT. It could attract digital nomads, capital flight, and innovation simply by being Bitcoin-friendly. In a multipolar world increasingly defined by fragmentation and distrust, Bitcoin represents not chaos, but neutrality, a monetary system not owned by Washington, Beijing, or Brussels. Ironically, this move could be most appealing not to the rich nations, but to the excluded ones, the sanctioned, the isolated, the underbanked. Countries like Iran, Venezuela, or even North Korea, already cut off from global finance, could see Bitcoin not just as a hedge, but as a lifeline. But here's the paradox. They may lack the institutional strength, governance, or infrastructure to execute this strategy effectively. The real threat to the financial order comes not from a desperate regime, but from a well-run, forward-thinking middle power, perhaps a Gulf state, or a small European nation with a strong energy sector and a penchant for innovation. A country like Norway, with abundant hydroelectric power and a sovereign wealth fund, or Qatar, with deep reserves and a soft power strategy already underway, could seize this opportunity. And once one domino falls, others will follow. But let's not be naive. The road to this monetary revolution is paved with risk. A country that prints money to buy Bitcoin is gambling on several levels. First, on Bitcoin's continued growth. Second, on its internal political stability. Imagine the scandal if the bet goes south. And third, on the international response. The United States, the EU, and other economic powers are unlikely to sit idle. They may view such a move as a threat to dollar hegemony and financial stability. Sanctions, trade restrictions, or coordinated media attacks are all on the table. The nation in question must be ready to defend not only its decision, but its sovereignty. And yet, the cost of not acting may be even greater. Central banks are trapped in a cycle of debt monetization and currency debasement. Inflation, once transitory, now appears entrenched. Trust in institutions is eroding, and the next financial crisis, be it triggered by debt, war, or technology, will not be solved with old tools. Bitcoin offers a new paradigm, not a perfect one, but a radically different one. So, who will act first? El Salvador made headlines by adopting Bitcoin as legal tender, but it is a dollarized economy and lacks the capacity to print its own currency. Their experiment is bold but limited. Other nations watch with curiosity and caution. The real game begins when a sovereign prints local currency explicitly to buy Bitcoin, not with private reserves, not through mining operations, but as state monetary policy. That's when the paradigm shifts. That's when the spell of fiat begins to break. Because here's the truth no central banker wants to admit. If Bitcoin succeeds, fiat fails. Not immediately, not absolutely, but fundamentally. The very logic of endless money printing is incompatible with the logic of scarcity. And history shows that once a better monetary technology emerges, one that is more secure, portable, and resistant to debasement, it eventually wins. We may be approaching that moment. So yes, the first country to print its own currency to buy Bitcoin might just win. Not because it beat the market, but because it saw through the illusion before the others did. Because it acted with courage while the rest hesitated. And because in a world drowning in paper promises, it chose something real. Not just code, not just speculation, but a monetary firewall against the chaos of the old world. The first country to act won't just make history, it will rewrite it. There will be a race among nations to print money and buy Bitcoin. In other words, to build a strategic BTC reserve. No country can afford to be the last one in.